Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. Today, we're going to talk about this Phragmipedium. Phragmipediums are my absolute favorites. They're huge, monstrous plants. They have gorgeous big flowers, a lot of them do. And this one is Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice. First thing I'd like to point out about this plant is, as you can see, it's very big. It's got huge, long, strappy green leaves. I think they're just gorgeous. These are massive plants, and I have it that far away so that you guys can get an idea of exactly how big these plants are. Now, the one behind it right there is also a Phragmipedium, and again, big, huge plants. These plants make big, huge leaves, big, tall flower spikes, and big, huge flowers. And who cannot like that? But I've got it set up over here against the bathroom door so you can see how tall this flower spike is, keeping in mind that this is a multifloral and it's going to continue to extend and lengthen that flower spike as it produces more and more and more flowers. So I'm in my Sunday bests, basically my pajamas. So you'll have to excuse me. I'm in an old pair of work scrubs. I'm going to go stand next to this flower spike so you can see how tall it is. Now, I'm not wearing shoes that have heels on them. I've just got very flat shoes. Matter of fact, I'll take my shoes off and I'll go barefoot. So I'm about 5'7" tall, 5'7.5". I don't know what that is in centimeters. I'm 5'7.5" tall. And I'm going to go walk and stand next to this plant. Okay, so 5'7.5", first flower on it. And you can see that it's coming up to here on me, and it's just going to keep going. These things get huge, massively long flower spikes with very big, beautiful flowers. Now, this one is Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice, and it is a primary hybrid. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch things around. I'm going to discuss a bit more in detail about the plant. As I mentioned, it's a primary hybrid. But I'd like you guys to get a better look at maybe the flower or the roots. And I'm going to discuss how I've cared for this plant, just give you a little bit more information about this stunner of a Phragmipedium, because it's a stunner. It's big, it's bold, it's there, and it's gorgeous. Okay, so as I mentioned, I moved the plant from the floor to the table, so definitely the whole plant won't get into the picture. I believe I made a video of the haul where I got my 3 big massive Phrags. So I got these last year at one of the sales table from the Orchid clubs, and I snatched them up because whereas they were very expensive for the sales table, they were very cheap for the plants that are this size, this mature. Had I bought a plant like this through the nursery, it would have been upwards of $400 or more here in WA. But I got it for $90. So to me, that's a win-win because this is a massive plant. It's a primary hybrid and it's got beautiful flowers. So yes, I did mention it's a primary hybrid. Again, this is Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice, and this is a primary hybrid of Phragmipedium longifolium and Phragmipedium sargentianum. Now, I love my Phrags, and I take, particularly if it's a primary hybrid or a species, I snatch them up because in Perth, Western Australia, they're difficult to find. I don't have many species Phragmipediums. The ones that I do have are tiny, And I know that it's going to be years before I get any blooms out of those, because they will get to be this size plant. And that's a long time to wait. So yeah, I got this plant last year, and it came with this one right here that it consumed. You can see what's left of the flower spike on it. And this one that's in bloom now was maturing. It's since grown these two new growths, and it had a little bit of a bulk when I repotted it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. To be honest with you, I've not dealt with a plant quite this size before I bought them. I've got some big ones, but not this big, because like I said, this is a massive tall plant. You guys saw exactly how huge that flower spike was. I got two new growths coming for whenever they will mature. So Phragmipediums that are this tall seem like slow growers because it takes a couple years for the fans that are this to get this big and then to bloom out. When the reality is they're quite fast growers. You just have to consider that they grow huge, massive structures. Keep that in mind. These do take a while to get the blooms from them because the fans get so big it takes a long time for them to grow to maturity. Okay, what do I have it potted in? Just like all of my slipper orchids, I have them potted in. This one is in a mixture of large and small pumice with a couple of microfiber cleaning cloths scattered throughout to bring the moisture to all the way through evenly. It's got a water reserve level with little holes right here. I try to keep the water level in these things at all time. However, I treat these and I water these just like I do every other plant in my collection. They get watered on Saturday and Saturday only. Now, Phragmipediums do not like to have dry roots. They like their roots wet all the time. And so far, even with the plant this big in this size of pot, in my heat that I get here in Perth, Western Australia, I've been fine. Another thing to remember with Phragmipediums, they are not heavy feeders. Let me reiterate that. They don't need a lot of food at all. You'd think they would because of how huge and massive these plants are, but they don't. And frags are really good because they let you know when you're giving them too much of a good thing because they'll get leaf tip burn. So I was having some problems with my RO system and it wasn't working to its optimum and I replaced the system. So I'm not going to have that problem anymore. But if you give your plants too much feed, you'll get this and it will eventually, kill the plant. Don't feed them. So how do I fertilize a Phragmipedium that's this big? I'll tell you how. Once a growing season, it will get a very dinky tiny amount of calcium, magnesium, and seaweed and fertilizer once a growing season, but they don't get them all at the same time. Now, for the seaweed, I give them like 20 parts per million. That's it. For the fertilizer, I give it about 70 parts per million. That's it. And for the calcium, magnesium, I give it also at about 70 parts per million. And that's it. And it only gets it once a growing season. Other than that, it's watered every Saturday, all year long, no fail. So now that we've kind of discussed what I've got it potted in, I did forget to mention that I've got a top dressing of non-porous decorative river stones, quite thick on the top of this because, again, they don't like their roots to dry out. And I kind of have the rock sort of pushed up against the base because the roots, when they come out, don't like to be exposed to air either. So with frags, you want to kind of keep your media level up to about the area where these are going to start producing roots. So I can tell by looking at this pot that this is not deep enough of a pot, and I need to have a deeper pot for this size of a plant, because when these new roots here grow out, they're going to grow out from here, and they're going to be exposed to air. So I don't know how I'm going to do this, because this is going to start putting out roots while this flower spike is still growing. And I think we might have to sacrifice whatever's going on with the flower spike, because this is going to go into a much bigger pot, much more reminiscent of the size of that one's pot right there. And then I will wash and clean this pot and reuse it for another plant. But that's a quick little note that this is going to have to be repotted, because there's no way I can get enough media piled up to about, you can see where there's I'll zoom in here. You can see where this little leaf and that little leaf create a join right through here. You want to have your medium close to that join, but where the water won't get into it, because the roots are going to come out from basically there down. And this is going to need repotted, because the roots here, when they start coming out, are going to be exposed to air, and that will guarantee their death. So now let's go ahead and readjust the placement of this plant so we can have a look at its flower. Okay, so we've zoomed in nicely on this flower of Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice. And again, this is a primary hybrid cross between species Phragmipedium longifolium and Phragmipedium sargentianum. Now, I'd just like to say this is a gorgeous flower, and it's huge. I know it doesn't look huge, but I'm going to put my hand behind it so that you guys can see how big that thing is. I mean, that's a huge plant. That's a huge flower. Now, what's very lovely about this plant is it is a sequential bloomer. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, maybe. Let's pull out a little bit here, and we'll see that we've got already one bud, and we've got a second one peeking out right there. And no one's going to complain about that. The only thing that that means is that this flower spike is going to get a whole heck of a lot bigger and taller. This I bought in flower, like I said, last year about this time, and it stayed in flower for 4 or 5 weeks. So you can imagine how tall this flower spike is going to get. But again, not going to complain. Look at how beautiful that flower is. Look at that slipper. I love the Phragmipediums because their slippers look like actual slippers, and not all of the halves do. And I also like the twisties. And that is a beautiful primary hybrid Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice. There you have it, guys. A follow-up on a purchase from last year. My first flower spike on Phragmipedium Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now, we all know that I love Phragmipediums. Frags are my favorite orchid, full stop. And like I said, when I saw these for sale at the price that they had them, I had to have them. And they're just stunningly beautiful plants. I thank you guys so very much for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. A subscribe would be great. And everyone have a fabulous day.